So you're thinking about running, but not sure how to take the first step. My name is Brian Patterson, and I'm here to help. Welcome to Brian's Run Pod. Welcome back to Brian's Run Pod. Today we're diving back into our conversation with Jana Barrett, a body movement specialist with a truly unique approach to fitness. If you haven't caught the first part of our chat, I highly recommend you give it a listen. It's packed with insights that you won't want to miss. Now, a little fun fact I forgot to mention last time, Jana hails all the way from New Zealand. So yes, I had to get up bright and early to record our interview, but it was totally worth it. In the first part of today's chat, we explored some really interesting ways on how to use a simple broom to improve mobility. And if that sounds intriguing, trust me, it is. I'm excited for you to hear the rest of our conversation today, so I really hope you enjoy our chat. And I know, and also the other thing is you don't need to have because I saw you doing on Instagram, the one where you were doing it with a broom, doing the same exercises with a broom. So you don't have to buy all the fancy equipment, as it were.
No, you don't straight away, because it's a really difficult thing for me to introduce to people, because you won't find a steel mace in most gyms.
Yeah.
And sometimes people kind of watch me and they think, hey, that looks kind of interesting, but I don't really know what it's going to feel like. And they can't really experience how the mace will load the body, that it has a heavy ball on one side. So it puts a really different type of demand on the human body than like a dumbbell or barbell. So I tell people, just grab your broomstick and just take it out, just try it.
Try it out,
Try some of the movements with a broomstick. And that's quite popular, especially with the women. They kind of like, we're going to switch our broomsticks for the steel mace and become feminine warriors.
Just before we get on to specifically the running, because this is a running podcast, as it were. So, I mean, was there any reason why you focus more on women, or is it just the way it worked out? I mean, did you get many men who sort of came to you?
Yes, so I have two businesses. I have a face-to-face business here in Wellington, and I tend to attract quite a few men here face-to-face, but online I just focus on women. And I fell into it completely accidentally because I think women feel more comfortable with other women, and especially because I'm 47, so a woman that is my age naturally will feel more comfortable with a woman who is also in her 40s. Or
yes,
than 20-year-old dude in the gym that has really no idea what it's like to live in a middle-aged, female body. So I fell into it quite accidentally. Women feel very comfortable with me, but so do men. But most of the men that I coach are also in their late 40s and 50s and older.
Right.
So I just tend to attract that kind of mix.
So let's say I'm a runner, and I'm looking for alternative forms of training, because I know you did say you do have had trained runners beforehand. I mean, what sort of advice on the strength conditioning, or even with the tack fit point of view, what's the best way of getting started?
So I really want to talk about mobility, because you probably know, Brian, that most runners will get injured at some point of their running career. And I think, I remember I was reading an article where it said that 75% of runners will get injured at some point of their running career. And that's a horrendous number. That is a very, very high number. So, and, I don't run myself anymore now, but I see runners everywhere. New Zealand is a real running country.
Yeah.
I can identify quite quickly when I see people running what's missing in terms of their mobility. So I think that what I would like to tell your beautiful audience of runners is you need to be doing systematic, targeted, daily, ideally, mobility And that mobility is not stretching. It's quite different. So to explain the difference between stretching or flexibility and mobility, it's quite different. So stretching is kind of when you're putting your muscles into like a passive stretch. So you're stretching your muscles, and it's quite passive move, which is great. Obviously, we need to have nice and flexible muscles, but it often puts a lot of tension and lots of load on the muscles. And if you've already got knots in there and stiffness and tension, it's kind of, if you imagine a rubber band with a knot in it, if you're stretching it, you're just tightening the knot, breaking. Whereas mobility, it's a very dynamic movement, and you need to support the stretch with strength. So mobility essentially is really strength training for joints and tendons and, connective tissue like tendons and ligaments. And that's usually where most runners have injuries, right? Around the joint and usually the tendons and the ligaments.
Yeah.
So mobility will help with the stiffness, the tension, the aches, the pains, the discomfort we get either because of our training. So if you're running a lot and you're just doing a lot of repetitive, movement, then that will introduce tension into your body. Tension will become stiffness, will become a small ache, will become a big ache, become an injury.
Yeah.
Or a modern lifestyle. We set a lot, and some of us have to for work. We look at computing, so inevitably we have, tight hips. We have slightly switched off glutes. We have, kyphosis that kind of slouched over shoulders. Our heads very rarely sit perfectly directly above our spinal column because of the amount of time we're spending on the screen.
Yeah, especially now,
Especially now. So mobility will will basically make you move well without tension, stiffness, and pain. So I think that is the number one kind of exercise modality that I would recommend to runners. Mobility, restore the range of motion in your joints too, your ankles, your hips, your thoracic spine, and move well, move, be able to access the movement that your body was designed to access.
Yeah. I mean, are there any specific exercises that people could get started with? I mean, you could explain, as it were.
So obviously, as runners, you need to focus on your legs the most.
Yeah.
So I kind of think you need to focus on mobility in your legs the most, and then focus on strengthening the upper body to be able to support you and have good posture while you're running. So ankles is what I see the most, probably tight ankles. And if you see runners who kind of flick their lower leg outwards.
Yeah, I see that quite a bit. Yes, I do, yeah.
You see that a lot.
Yeah.
But that's a limited range of motion in ankles.
Right.
You can't take the ankle through the flexion. So in order to access the movement, you're going to have to go around and flick leg outwards. Or tight hips you can recognize as well, because people just...
Yeah, I'm one of those. because we're sitting down, you get the hip flexors get really tight.
Yeah, they get really tight. And then tight hamstrings too, because, for running, you need that beautiful kind of recoil off the ground. So hamstring need to be very elastic and be able to absorb as well as you are, touching the ground and bouncing back up. So you need nice flexible hamstrings too. And, stretching them statically doesn't really work then on that. So again, mobility is just fantastic. So focus on mobility in the ankles and the hips, and then focus on stability in the knees, because knees are another massive, issue. Rural runners have so many issues with their knees, right? Knees need to be stable. So you need to build the strength and stability around the knees.
Yeah. Because I know, like you said, runners are quite guilty of having very stiff ankles, especially, if they wanted to transition to triathlon, where it's, swimming. And there you need quite flexible ankles for a kick. So, and
toes
speaking...
too. Not forget about toes.
Yeah.
Toes. I mean, we should have wicked flexibility and mobility in our toes. You should be able to pick up a marble with your toes, but not many people can.
Oh, no.
because of the shoes we wear, like really pointy, stiff shoes, whereas our foot has been designed perfectly to be barefoot and to have amazing mobility and beautifully spread toes, because that's how our brain receives biofeedback as well.
Is that because of because we wear the type of shoes, we do every day? And I know sandals, you're able to sort of grip more with your toes. So,
yeah. Because I listened to one of your episodes, Brian, where one of your physio friends was talking about barefoot running, about thinking about the build-up shoes, which don't bend very well, and they are so stiff, and they have all these technologies and stuff. It's like our feet don't need any technology. Our feet is designed perfection. It's an engineering marvel. The whole arch and how it bounces and recoils. It's like a spring inside the foot. It was made to run, and we put it in these prisons all day long in these stiff, pointy shoes. And then when we go for a walk and run, we have the, over-engineered shoes.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky I live in New Zealand, and New Zealanders love being barefoot.
Oh, do they?
You see people in the supermarket without shoes, even in the middle of winter. Like, New Zealanders love being barefoot, but other countries are not like that.
Moving on to I've got here the Mastering the Ancient Warrior training. Did you name that, or is that something that was part of the TACFit training methods?
No. So Steel Mace came to TACFit about 3 years ago, so quite recently. But I have researched the Steel Mace because it felt so right in my hands. And so I researched the history, and then I realized that not only primal humans used a steel mace like tools to hunt and defend themselves, but in Asia, so in India and Persia, they used to train warriors with the steel mace.
Yeah.
It was made from wood. Even the club bells come from India. They're called Indian clubs. And they made them very long from various types of wood. So obviously to make them heavier or lighter. And it was TACFit and Scott Sonnen who, made it a little bit more user-friendly by making it out of metal. And they are just about 1 meter long. But the steel mace is a little bit longer. And it is a total warrior weapon. They trained women and men warriors and wrestlers 2,000-3,000 years ago with the steel mace. So it's got a very long history, and I think that somehow our DNA and our bodies remember that.
Yeah. So the steel mace is, looking at you now, it is over your left shoulder. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's about 1 meter long metal stick. So now they make them out of metal.
Yeah.
Steel. And then it has a ball of steel at the end of it. And you can get that in various weights.
Oh,
so
right.
A beginner steel mace is 4 kilos. That's where I start all my clients when they first begin their steel mace journey. Start on 4 kilos. It feels very different to a 4 kilo dumbbell. So often people make a mistake of getting the mace that's too heavy. But 4 kilos is a very good starting weight. And then you can go all the way up to 30 kilos if you can.
So the length of the steel mace, is that always the same, or can that be shorter? Or
I get my steel mace from one company and they are the same length, but different companies do different. Some sort of a bit thinner. Yeah, so there's a bit of a variation. Sometimes you can start on slightly shorter one with the binner weight, and they can get just a little bit longer. But I personally think that when your body gets used to a certain tool, I don't want the dimensions to change. I want the weight to change, but I don't necessarily want the dimension, because clients are not only dealing with the increased weight, but they are dealing with the altered physics and dynamics and, dynamics of the tools. So I just order my mace from a company that they make them the same length, but obviously different one.
So, we've already talked about kind of like the advantages of, because of the mobility and using these types of implements and equipment and exercises. So, I mean, I know looking at some of the exercises that you're doing, obviously I don't know what it feels like, but it's going to be very different to like lifting a dumbbell or, doing a bench press or that kind of thing, because the weight, from what I gather, the weight is going to change throughout the movement. Is that correct? Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you get it moving, and when you're swinging it around your body, you're dealing with the traction, and it's literally flying across the whole back. So if you swing it behind your head, it's going through a massive range of motion. So it's going to load your body in such complex ways. But not just the muscles, but the joints. So what I found when I first started training with the Mace and the clubbells was how strong my joints and my ligaments and tendons became, because you're using traction. Because normally when you hold a barbell or dumbbell, the weight is very close to you. When you swing a Mace, the weight is over a meter away from your body, from where you hold it. So it puts a massive demand on the whole body and the ligaments, the tendons, and the joints as well. And it kind of opens the joint as well, because weightlifting is very compressive on the human joint, because you're generally just loading the body and then you're moving with it. Whereas because we can use traction and we're casting the Mace, away from our body, we're actually creating that lovely space in the joint, but we're building strength around the joint at the same time.
So, I mean, if I did it for the first time, first couple of times, am I going to feel sore in very different places to, let's say, traditional exercises?
Yeah, and that is the reason why I start on very light Maces, because I don't like making people sore. But there's going to be some feedback from your body, because it is so different, the training. Yes. So sometimes people are often very surprised how difficult it is, considering how light the Mace is, especially men, especially very fit men and strong men, where I give them a 4-kilo Mace. They're like, you're going to be joking, right?
Yeah. Yes, I bet. Yeah.
There's a bit of an ego there.
Yeah, I know.
Bench press 60 kgs. And I'm like, that's cool. But, I trust me on this. This is going to feel very different. And so it's a bit of a humbling pursuit for a lot of people.
Because I know that, just an aside, I injured my wrist just by picking up one of those big 19-litre water coolers thing. And it was because I was just lifting it the wrong way. Because it was rather than it being standing straight up, it was on its end, and I was and I put a lot of pressure on my wrist, and I sprained the wrist, and it was just so, it was, although it was just my wrist, I couldn't even eat properly for the rest of the time, rest of the day. And it was very, very uncomfortable, and I couldn't sleep properly. So it's always, if anything, I hope I like to prove to the listeners, okay, it's very good going running, improving your aerobic fitness and whatever, and also doing strength training, but also is doing other forms of exercises that can help improve your ligaments and joints, because it's all part of your holistic fitness.
Absolutely. The Mace, like you're talking about wrists, but imagine if bringing the Mace behind your back, it's going to load your wrists so much in the full range of motion, just in one when you're doing a bench press or something. So I think that what people have to think about is not just their favorite sport, but it's just life. It's opening jars. It's digging up your garden.
Yeah.
It's the rubbish out. Those are not a very two-dimensional movements.
Yeah.
They are often quite complex movements. If you don't build the strength in those ranges, it will lead to injury.
Yeah.
It always does.
Yeah, as I've just proved. So. Yeah, unfortunately. Do you have any anecdotes or personal success stories of some of your athletes?
So I'm going to talk about my awesome client who is an ultra marathon runner.
Oh, yes, please do.
Yeah. Fabulous. So he picked it up quite recently and is having phenomenal success. And, I can't even perceive the grit required to run 100-kilometer race in a bush. That's a superhuman feat. And so Fabs was training with me. He was doing the TechFit circuits and particularly focusing on mobility. Yeah, because he had a strength and conditioning coach and a running coach specifically for his running and endurance. But he was really after the mobility. And what's really beautiful with the steel mace is that it's not only giving you strength, but it's giving you mobility under load, because the movements are so complex. It's actually got the mobility baked in. So you can still do, bodyweight mobility on top of it. But you're essentially with the steel mace doing a strength workout that has a lot of mobility baked into it. So that's what he really enjoyed. Just another piece to help him avoid the injuries. And, once you get fatigued, it's so easy to get injured, right? So have the body conditioned and to be doing some very complex, multidimensional movements really helped him avoid injury and complement his other training, even strength training.
And did he do the event? Has he finished the event? Or?
He's doing events all the time. He's running all the time. It's insane. I mean, it's just unstoppable. Yeah, he's a little bit younger than me, but he's a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, the ultra marathon has really taken off. I think if ever there was one event for runners now, that's over after COVID. That's completely skyrocketed. It's not 20, 30 years ago, it was the marathon or whatever. But now I don't know where people find time.
And just the mental fortitude for that level of discomfort and pain. They're running through the night. It's insane. Yeah. But then, I coach other runners. I had, who springs to mind, is Suzanne, who used to run 140 kilometers a week as a training. She was a semi-competitive runner.
Yeah.
But was absolutely plagued with chronic pain and injuries in her feet, in her hamstrings. Her hips were tight. She was in so much pain that she couldn't even walk, let alone run. So people like that, I just start with mobility and rehabbing their injuries and finding out what's causing the aches and the pain. Where are the weaknesses? Where are the tensions? Where is the missing mobility? And also assessing the movement patterns too, because some of us have not learned how to move our bodies in the optimal way. And so every suboptimal movement will introduce tension or injuries in the body. Yeah. And she's running again. She's not running 140 kilometers anymore because she realized at the age of 52, that's probably like much.
Yeah. Sometimes less is more.
Sometimes less is more. But she goes for fun, 7-8 kilometer runs and does a lot of mobility and does Mace training, and it's very happy.
Yeah.
There's something incredibly rewarding about getting people out of chronic pain.
So on that first session, it is more about your kind of doing this consultation, trying to assess what they've done before, what they're doing now, and then maybe just doing a couple of the exercises and how, how they look. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what I usually do with people. I mean, at the moment, probably I would say 70% of people that come to me come with some kind of chronic pain and injuries.
Oh, right.
So usually very active people. I get lots of CrossFitters, powerlifters. I mean, at the moment, I have a martial artists. I have powerlifters and weightlifters a lot, bodybuilders. So people like that are incredibly strong, incredibly active, incredibly committed to their sport. But they just, as they are aging, they're getting the chronic recurring injuries that's really spoiling their enjoyment, almost to the point, and surface as well.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes they have to give up altogether. And I think there's nothing more sad than you having to give up the sport you absolutely love. You are in pain, or you are having issues with your shoulders or issues with your knees, and you're facing, you're staring down a barrel of surgeries and other things.
Yeah, very good point.
To show people that oftentimes you can actually solve it
as a preventative thing. So is the advice to them is that, okay, is it kind of in addition to when they're doing the training, or rather is it they do maybe one day a week, they do their mobility training? So, or, as I said, is it just something that, okay, you do your running and then you do maybe a bit of, 20, 30 minutes strength training and then you do the mobility as well?
Yes. So anyone over the age of 40 who is not doing daily mobility is really setting themselves up for aches and injuries, whether they are active or not. So to any runner who's listening to this podcast, start doing 10 minutes of mobility every single day, not just for your running, but for overall aging and quality of life. Everybody can find 10 minutes. It is so simple. You can do it in your pajamas, in the corner of your room. You don't need any equipment. You are just moving your body for 10 minutes a day. And I often tell people, think about it as saving for retirement. So all of us are putting some kind of, deposits into the bank and saving for our retirement.
Yes.
Mobility is exactly that. And that's how I want people to look at it. You are making continuous small deposits into your old person's mobility bank. So
Very good point. Very good point.
When you're 70, 80, 90, and are you struggling to get in and out of a car? You're struggling to get on and off the floor. I have people in their 50s who can't get comfortably down to the ground and then get up. Or if you can't get in and out of a chair, those are very basic things. But I see people in their 50s and 60s who can't do that.
Yeah.
If they just did 10 minutes of mobility, at least 5 times a week, they wouldn't be in this situation. So mobility every day, regardless of what you do, if you're a runner or if you powerlifter or you just do a bit of a gym training, mobility is an absolute non-negotiable.
And so people can look those exercises up on...
Yeah. Absolutely. I have a 6-day free, completely free mobility challenge on my website where you get 6 10-minute videos. The 5 of them are specifically targeted to a certain area of the body, and the 6th one is head to toe mobility. If you do that 5 times a week, the chances are that you will not get injured as often.
Oh, right.
You will maintain the functionality of your body. And you will age literally like a fine wine without any issues. And it will help you with your sport as well. And often injuries are sometimes inevitable and they do happen. But mobility also helps you rehab those, and you will rehab them much faster, because while you can't strength train and run because you are recovering from an injury, you absolutely can do mobility. So you will recover. You're still working on, how your body moves and the quality of your movement and pain-free movement. So it's a wonderful modality to rehab from injury as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that point of you saying that we're so focused on, especially the over 50s, in terms of thinking about the financial benefits of, going down for the pension. But if you're not around to reap the benefits of whatever financial savings you have when you come to retire, then, so there needs to be, if anything, it needs to be some kind of maybe government policy, in a way.
I wish it was this simple that literally people can avoid so many doctor's visits and physiotherapists and chiropractors and osteopaths if they only just did 10 minutes of mobility. It's mind-boggling. I mean, I have clients who go to doctors for hip pain. I had a client who went to a doctor because she's had hip pain for 18 months, really bad hip pain. And the doctor told her to not sleep on it and gave her painkillers.
No.
And she fixed it in 3 weeks with mobility, completely gone. Not a trace of the pain at all in weeks. So I wish more people knew that, because I'd love people to think about how they actually want to live the last third of their, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. You can do a lot, because aging, as much as growing old is inevitable, you don't have to become a decrepit person that just aches all over and has a lot of injury and can't do a lot of things. That's got nothing to do with aging. I mean, there's physical decline, obviously.
Yeah.
But you see people. I mean, I surfed with a 75-year-old on his birthday just the other day. I mean, it's a choice. Sometimes it's a choice. It's a commitment, and it's a choice.
Yeah, that's very good. Very good point. Because it's, I know we know this is a running podcast, and we've talked about the mobility exercises, but I do think at the end of the day, and like we both agreed on that, I know. My father has dementia, but in later years, it's about that. And my wife's father, he's not as mobile, and I know that gets him down, because he was a very active man. So, and then you've got the two sides of the coin. When you are getting older, it is about your mental, cognitive health, but also about your physical health, and just to try to prepare yourself for that means that you are going to enjoy, your later years much more so, because not having that, can be a strain on your family, because it's just like, I know what my dad was like when pre-dementia, and it's quite sad, really. So you want them to be the same person all the time, but that doesn't happen,
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Yeah. And some things are inevitable, and they will strike us, disease and conditions. But I think it will be incredibly empowering for people to know that there is actually a lot you can do. That you don't just sit back and see what fate brings you. You can actually proactively take charge of your health and your well-being. And, exercise has been linked to improve cognitive and brain health, because there's actually enzyme we make in our muscles while we exercise. They are so nourishing for our brain. So then I think that we are perhaps we are the generation now that is just getting more research and more information about these things. My grandmother never exercised.
Right.
It wasn't the thing. And so she had horrendous osteoporosis and spent the last 20 years of her life constantly breaking bone.
Oh, no. Okay.
Which just was really sad. And she was completely a healthy person, but at the end, she just got so tired of the fractures that she died at the age of 86, but there was nothing wrong with her. There was no disease. She was not on any medication. If only someone told her to just do a little bit of strength training, and it doesn't even to mean the gym and the weight. And just do some squats and push-ups at home. It doesn't have to be complicated. And a little bit of mobility to maintain, balance and just good movement would have prevented all of that.
Well, I've really enjoyed this chat. We come to the end of the podcast, and I think we've covered a whole gamut of issues. and I do really, I do apologize, Jana, I got your name wrong at the beginning, but anyway,
no,
you've forgiven me.
He's a mistake to make in an English speaking.
Is there any, I think the main takeaway from this is, like you said before, is just to take 10 minutes, maybe going through some form of mobility exercises. You can either find them on your website, if not, looking up on the YouTube, because I think, if you agree with me, that is you're investing in your future. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it will be sad to, you have a lot of runners in your audience, and there's no reason why you can't still be running when you're 67, 80. You might not maybe be doing ultra marathons.
No.
And that's maybe okay too. But there is no reason why physically you should not be able to go for a jog 3 times a week around the block if it brings you joy. So, getting old doesn't mean giving up on the things you love. And if you can just do put a little bit of effort into keeping your body moving well, then there's no reason why you can't do the things you love and live your life to the fullest for as long as you possibly can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for going to come on the podcast. As I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of split the podcast in two. So because, I think we've done an hour, if that's okay with you. And then we'll...
Yeah, it was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really grateful.
And that's a wrap for another exhilarating episode of Brian's Run Pod. Thanks for tuning in, folks. As always, we've got your back with all things running. And next week, get ready for some awesome beginner hints and tips to kickstart your running journey. Oh, and before we sign off, exciting news. We're now available on YouTube. So whether you're pounding the pavement or chilling at home, you can catch us there too. Plus, we have a new feature on the podcast. You can now send me a message. Yep, you heard it right. Brian's Run Pod has become interactive with the audience. If you look at the top of the episode description, tap on send us a text message. You can tell me what you think of the episode or alternatively, what you would like covered. If you're lucky, I might even read them out on the podcast. Hey, if you want to keep up with the latest updates, behind the scenes fun, and even some exclusive content, make sure to follow me on social media. You can find me on Twitter, or should I say X, at Brian's Run Pod. We've also just launched a shiny new Facebook page. Simply search for Brian's Run Pod and give us a like. And don't forget to hop on over to Instagram where you can catch all our visual adventures at Brian's Run Pod. For those of you who love diving deep into the episodes, head over to our website, www.briansrunpod.co.uk, and there you'll find detailed show notes, handy chapter markers, make it too easy to navigate through our favourite discussions. Please leave a review as it will always help others find this podcast. Music is by Happy Days by Stock Audio, not forgetting artwork by Alice Patterson. Till next week, thanks again for listening.